Okay, so you've probably seen the explosive headline. A former US president is suing one of the world's biggest broadcasters for a staggering $10 billion. This is way more than just a news story, it's a massive legal showdown. We're going to break down the whole case. Donald Trump versus the BBC. And right at the very center of it all is this direct and, let's be honest, explosive accusation from Donald Trump himself. He's claiming the BBC didn't just twist his words or take them out of context. No, he says they literally put words in his mouth by deceptively editing a speech to make him say something he never actually said. And the number here, wow, we are talking about $10 billion in damages. Now, to put that into perspective for you, this isn't just a fine or a penalty. A lawsuit of this size could genuinely threaten the entire financial future of the BBC. The stakes are just astronomical. So let's dig into this. What are the actual claims being made in this monumental lawsuit? Let's take a look at what the official court documents say. The case itself was filed in Florida. It's a 33-page document, and it lays out two main charges. The first is defamation. That's pretty straightforward. It's about damaging someone's reputation. But the second one is unfair trade practices. And in this case, that basically implies the BBC used deceptive methods in its business of reporting the news. And when you read the language in the lawsuit, it is incredibly strong. It claims this wasn't just some mistake, but a malicious and intentional act. It even goes so far as to allege this was a brazen attempt to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. So these are some very, very serious accusations. Okay, to really understand this whole lawsuit, we need to go back in time to where it all started. A really controversial edit of a speech from January 6th, 2021. So here's how it all went down. The key thing to understand is that this wasn't just a small trim. They apparently took two different clips from the speech, nearly an hour apart, and edited them together to sound like one continuous thought. Now, according to Trump's lawsuit, the edit was so bad that an internal whistleblower at the BBC actually flagged it, and the fallout was huge and immediate. A public apology from the BBC and the resignations of two of their absolute top executives, the Director General and the head of news. And this brings us right to the central question of the entire case. Was this a calculated act of defamation designed to harm, or was it a catastrophic but legally different journalistic error? So you've got two completely different arguments here. On one side, Trump's team is calling this a willful and purposeful distortion. Basically, they're saying it was a deliberate act of defamation. But on the other side, you have the BBC. They're admitting, yes, this was a massive breach of our own ethics, but they argue it doesn't cross the legal line into defamation. That single distinction is what this entire $10 billion case is all about. But here's the thing. This lawsuit might not just be about one single incident. It fits into a much, much bigger story about media bias and, of course, political strategy. Which leads you to ask the question, is this really about more than just one edited clip? Trump's team is arguing that this is part of a wider pattern of behavior. Take this example they point to, involving Liz Cheney. The way it was reported by a BBC presenter was that Trump suggested she should face a firing squad. But when you look at the full context, he was calling her a war hawk and using a kind of graphic hypothetical. Saying she should see what it's like to have guns trained on her like the soldiers she sends to war. So Trump supporters see this as another crystal clear example of misrepresentation. So you end up with two totally competing narratives about what's really going on here. On the one hand, is this a principled stand against what Trump calls fake news and unfair media bias? Or, as his critics suggest, is this just a classic political strategy to create a distraction and completely control the news cycle? All right, so where does all of this go from here? Let's take a look at the legal road ahead and what the consequences could be for everyone involved. Now, the location of this lawsuit is a really critical piece of strategy. You see, in the UK, there's something called a statute of limitations. It's basically a deadline to file a lawsuit. And this case would likely be too old to be filed there. But in Florida, there's no such time limit for these kinds of claims, and some legal experts argue its defamation laws are actually more favorable for someone like Trump. And let's just come back to that $10 billion number one more time. It is a massive figure. It's actually more than the BBC's entire annual revenue for the last financial year, so losing this case wouldn't just be damaging, it would be a truly existential threat to the broadcaster as we know it. Now, while most legal experts think winning the full $10 billion is an uphill battle for Trump, there's a big catch. Win or lose, the BBC is going to have to spend millions just to defend itself in court. And where does that money come from? Well, it comes from the UK public through the mandatory license fee they pay. It's also worth remembering this isn't Trump's first rodeo. He's gone after other media companies before and has actually secured multi-million-dollar payments. So, at the end of the day, we're left with this huge question. Is what we're watching the start of a real legal reckoning for what some call fake news and media overreach? Or is it simply a masterclass in political theater, perfectly designed to control the conversation and keep the world's attention exactly where he wants it? The answer? Well, it's not going to be decided in the headlines, but in a Florida courtroom.